Welcome to the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. You are now part of a small underground movement of dent technicians from all over the world. We are on a mission to change our industry with innovation, intelligence, and skill. But because we don't rely on an insurance company to steer customers our way, we need to do things different. We need to do things smarter. We do that through a network of technicians that we call the Tactical Tech Movement. Now let's get this revolution started.
Hey, what's up, everybody? John Hiley here and Angela Hiley with the Tactical Dent Tech Podcast. Hope you guys are all having a fabulous Sunday night. And I think we've been pretty true to this. I mean, occasionally we would do it on Monday, right? Mm-hmm. Occasionally we would drop it on Monday, but most of the time we've been actually getting it done on Sunday night if we're in town.
Yeah.
So this has probably been the most consistent that we've actually been with this podcast for the last, for quite a while.
Yeah.
So
is my thing on so people can hear me?
Your thing is on so people can hear you. I'm actually watching it go up and down right now. How is everybody doing on this amazing Sunday? Hope everybody's doing great. And all you podcast listeners, just a heads up. If some of you guys haven't head on over to the Marketing Savage Facebook group, you guys better head on over there. That's my new thing, y'all. It's going down over there, the Marketing Savage Facebook group. And just a heads up for all of you podcast listeners, the Marketing Revolution podcast, I'm actually committed to doing one episode every single day for an entire year.
Every day.
And I think I just dropped over the last week, I've dropped like 6 or 7 episodes in a row. So if you guys haven't checked that out, that is Marketing Revolution Podcast.
You doing it up.
So that being said, we actually stumbled across something pretty funny and actually found out that it was true today. And that is some dude took a shit.
Look at that, steal my thunder.
Some guy took a shit.
I was supposed to announce this.
On Nancy Pelosi's driveway today.
Yeah, and then I Googled.
Wait, maybe it was yesterday.
It was yesterday. But then I started Googling. I guess apparently they have this problem in San Francisco where they have a problem. Well, they have a homeless problem.
People are shitting everywhere.
Yeah, they're pooping all over the sidewalk.
I guess in San Francisco, it's appropriate if you just, if you got to take a shit, you just pull down your pants and take a shit. Reminds me of that time after the Chinese restaurant, me and you were driving back from the Springfield Mall.
Oh, yeah, I know. And then that almost happened when we were in Nashville, too.
That would have been bad.
That was like survival mode. We were like in Franklin, and we stopped and ate at this little Mexican joint.
Apparently, the dude live streamed it, though.
And, oh, yeah, he did. No, I was talking about in Nashville or whatever.
Oh, you was talking about your close call?
Oh, my God. It was horrible.
To me,
you go into, like, survival mode. Like, I do not care who you are. I bet that's happened to most of us where we've had to go and shit in, like, a ditch or something of that nature. You know, like you eat something bad, and that's what happened. I was like, why isn't John's stomach, like, upset?
Man, that was, like, the best Mexican restaurant that I've ever been to.
It was because I ate the refried beans, and John
phenomenal.
didn't. And we're, like, on these backcountry roads on the way back to the hotel, and my stomach was killing me, and I'm like, please, God, just please let me make it back to the hotel. And John's, like, telling me, he's like, Angela, he's like, do you have to take a shit? And I'm like, no. I'm like, don't say that. I'm like, you're going to bring it on. You're going to jinx it. And thankfully, my stomach started feeling better. But we were on this backcountry road, and I'm, like, looking, and I'm like.
Oh, yeah, we were deep in the sticks of Tennessee.
I was just like, well, there's some ditches over there, so I know if it does happen. And then John told me, he's like, because I was thinking, I was like, if I did, I was like, what was it going to use, to like, wipe my ass? And John's like, oh, I had microfiber towels in the back.
Yeah, we drove up to Tennessee over the last weekend. But it was a good time, really good time. Downtown Tennessee, Nashville's off the fucking hook.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Drove through there, but then we went there the next day. We didn't really want to hang out with the crowd in the evening.
No.
And just kind of like drove through there, checked it out, went there the next day. It was off the hook.
Yeah.
And man, the honky tonk bars down there, if you guys haven't been to Nashville, like every other bar or restaurant, they're just jamming fucking live music.
Yeah, it's
and
nice.
good shit, you know, good shit. I actually bought a cowboy hat.
Yes.
They had
made John buy the
like a hand
hat.
fucking made one because she was always talking shit. Like I had these different cowboy hats that were kind of like made out of fucking whatever woven. What are they?
They were like plastic, but they didn't even look like a cowboy hat. It looked like something like Crocodile Dundee would wear. And I'm like, that.
It looks like something Bret
hat.
Michaels would be jamming out.
I know,
like a fucking.
That is not a cowboy hat. I'm like,
so I got a real fucking deal cowboy. This motherfucker was like normally $400, and they had a 40% off discount, so I bought that motherfucker. And ended up being expensive as fuck, but it is a real deal. It was one of them things like what I kind of feel about cowboy hats, that when you find the right motherfucker and it fits on your head, you better buy that fucking thing.
Yeah, and John
because
looks so good.
I've tried on like all these cowboy hats, and either they're too big and they just fall over my head, or they're too small or they sit on top of my head. I mean, I grabbed this cowboy hat. I was like, man, that's a badass fucking cowboy hat. Grabbed it, stuck it on my head, and the thing just fit like a fucking glove.
Yeah, I would have been pissed if you wouldn't have bought that thing. So I'm glad that you got it.
Yeah. You know, speaking of that, I wanted to bring up this story because I don't think I've told this story in a while, and I don't even know that I've told it on this podcast. We were speaking of getting caught, and some of you dent technicians, or some of you guys out there who drive around for work and stuff like that, you guys could really understand this story. I was actually in between repair jobs, and all of a sudden, you know, it came over me. I'm like, dude, I gotta like really take a shit. So I end up, I'm over in Dayton, Ohio, and I'm driving towards New Carlisle, and I know there's a couple Speedway gas stations up there. So I'm driving along, and I'm like, literally, I'm at the point, guys, you know that time when, you know, you've got to take a shit so bad.
Are you sweating?
That
sweating?
It's like you're sitting, I like in my head, I'm going, man, there better not be nobody fucking in there. I'm like, you know, when I show up there, if there's somebody in there, I'm done. I'm gone. This is it, you know? So I run into this Speedway gas station. I'm literally opening the door. I run into the gas station, you know, went down beside the register. It's one of the ones where the restroom is kind of in the back of the Speedway. You know, they make them now where they're kind of like in the front of the store, like by the coolers and stuff. Well, this is the one you actually got to go back in behind the register on that left-hand side and go, that's where the restrooms are at. So I dart back there, and I go to open up the men's restroom, and it's fucking locked. Fucking locked. So I only had like literally one thing to do, and that's go over the fucking woman's restroom and open it up. I'm like, oh my God. And literally, like, this is one of them ones, as soon as your pants hit your ankles and as soon as my ass hit the toilet, I mean, it was like that on Dumb and Dumber. Whenever was it Jim Carrey, the one that got all that?
No, it was the other guy.
Yeah.
He gave him a bunch of like laxative
like
stuff.
I'm literally like hands on both sides of the wall, legs up in the air, like
What did
just
you eat?
absolutely just killed. And then the dreaded thing happens. The dreaded thing happens when you get stuck taking the shit in a woman's restroom. The most dreaded thing happened, and this is before all the shit where they were, you know, they like had women and men restrooms. This is back when I was like, I had to go commando. There was nothing I could do. I had to break into the women's restroom. I had the door locked and everything. It was like a single stall.
You were gonna
so I'm in there and I hear the dreaded sound of the fucking chink chink on the door.
Chink, chink.
And I know somebody's out there fucking waiting for me. I know somebody's out there waiting for me. So I finish up and I'm like, shit. Go to flush the toilet, and it all comes up, rises up, and floods out the sides, and just starts filling the restroom, and just fucking madness. And I'm like, dude, there's like nothing I can do about this. So I ended up walking out, like open the door and just kind of walking out like everything was normal and fine. And I meet this lady face to face, and she's a fucking big old woman too. I remember her face to this day, and she looked like she had to shit about as bad as I did.
This is wrong.
So she looked like she had to shit about as bad as I did. So we run into this hallway, and you ever like get stuck in like, you know, I'm talking about them little skinny Speedway hallways. You ever get stuck in a hallway with somebody, and then like you try to go right, but they try to go like left, and then you guys like do this little dance where like you go right with them, and then you go left, and it's like finally you're like, okay, well I'll go this way, and you go this way, and you guys kind of like get around each other. We had that real fucking awkward moment. She goes into that restroom, guys. And she stays in there.
Wait a minute. Did you stay out there and like?
I had to stay out there for a minute because
did you hide in like one of the aisles or something?
No. I was out in my
like,
truck. I was out in my truck, and I was just kind of peeping in there through the window because I was parked right up front. I was like, "Is she gonna stay?" Apparently, she had it about as bad as I did. Yeah. For any of you guys who are just joining, we were actually just talking at the beginning of the podcast about how somebody took a live live shit on Nancy Pelosi's driveway.
Yeah. And San Francisco has a poop.
Hope nobody's waking up. I hope nobody's waking up on Monday morning and listening to this.
I was reading
right now. Somebody's eating their Chick-fil-A biscuit, going, "Oh my god, I'm gonna have to turn this shit off."
I was just kind of like when I, because I Googled it and I'm like, man, that's pretty bad though. What the hell is going on out there in California? Like seriously, what's going on with that state? There's some I don't know what's going on with that state out there.
Shit, I think they actually just approved or just passed a law to where like something to the nature like adults can actually fuck with kids up to the age of like 10 years old and still not be considered a pedophile.
There's I don't know.
Now, I want you guys to think about that. So there's all these people in Hollywood. There's all this shit coming out about these people being fucking pedophiles. And there's all this shit coming out about potential indictments for certain people. And then all of a sudden in fucking California, they pass a law that actually says that like somebody could be of a certain like 10 years away and can like still fuck with a 10-year-old.
They always...
They're just some sick motherfuckers, man.
I read
what?
some type of article where they were saying like, they tend to do that stuff out there in California to try it out. This sounds bad, but like to try it out and to make it like to normalize it so that way it can be, can happen in other states. I don't know. Like that really weighs like really heavy on my soul. And I was telling John, I'm like, I think I've kind of like am a little overloaded and I'm going to have to like take a step back. Like, I don't know if, this shit's probably going on for like years and years and years. And now I just realize what is going on. And I'm just like, this is so fucked up. Like there's this thing that's on Netflix and I showed John or whatever, and it was called Cuties, right? This is like the big thing that's going on that people are talking about. And it's about these 10-year-old girls and they are dancing provocative. And when I was watching it, I was just kind of like, this is just not right. But then I was thinking like, okay, so if you think about it, like this day and age, the music, the pop stars that are out there dancing and this and that, they're basically mimicking these people, and they are looking up to them. And I was telling John, I was like, like I've said before about how when the movie Pretty Woman came out with Julia Roberts, how she kind of like made being a call girl or a prostitute seem glamorous and beautiful. And I remember watching that movie and was just like, yeah, I want to be a call girl for Halloween, this and that. And my mom never really like sat me down and had a conversation about like, you really don't want to be that. And I Googled it today. So like when that movie came out, I was 10 years old. And then they got this thing that's called Cuties that's on Netflix and it's about these 10-year-old girls. And I'm like, in all honesty, you can voice your opinion and say that it's wrong. But what John was saying is that when people are saying that it's wrong, kids are going to want to
do it more and more and more.
And I was thinking like, man, the only way in all honesty that we can, you got to have a talk with your kids about that shit. Because like when Jonathan was younger, we never really sheltered him. He played video games that were pretty violent or they had some sexual content and stuff in that. But we talked to him about that stuff.
I always said that like I let him ruin his life on Grand Theft Auto so that way he wouldn't ruin his life in the real world.
Yeah, but we always talk to him about that stuff,
like later on he grew up, he'd be like, oh shit, I ain't never gonna smoke crack. I done got fucked up, got 5 stars on Grand Theft Auto. You see what crack did to my life? Had me on top of a building shooting fucking helicopters.
And I mean, like, I remember when I was young, when I was like 10, 11 years old, all I wanted to do was be like I wanted to grow up. Like, I wanted to grow up extremely fast. That's what I'm saying. And I think that's a thing with kids. Like, I think it's always been a thing with kids. You know, it's like they want to grow up really, really fast. But one thing I always was telling Jonathan, I'm like, enjoy being a kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, yeah, and what I'm talking about is like, as soon as you tell kids they can't do shit, they want to do it.
Oh,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? Like, the whole thing I was telling her, like, the coolest thing ever back in the day was the parental advisory sticker they put on
Yeah.
all of the shit. You know, like, I was literally, as a kid, I was dubbing 2 Live Crew tapes and selling them to my buddies. Like, I got a hold of a 2 Live Crew tape, put it in the tape recorder, dub another tape, and then I've got a fresh 2 Live Crew tape to sell to my buddies. And literally, I'd walk up, be like, man, I got 2 Live Crew right here, bro. And everybody be like, oh.
Yeah.
And just stand around and like, dude, we would just be listening to that shit and parents come, turn it off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like one of them things where, anything that you tell a kid that they cannot do, they're
gonna
going
wanna
to do.
it. Absolutely.
And I know a lot of kids that were like super, like really fucking sheltered. And it's almost like the preacher's son, you know what I mean? Or the preacher's daughter. The shit them motherfuckers do is next level, man. Like, and I actually read a book recently that talked about that. It actually talked about, in general, we have like this inherent desire to be opposite of the way that our parents teach us. So if our parents tell us to do something, we want to do the exact opposite of that.
Yeah.
And it's, in a sense, it's a way that the whole book was like about generational cultures and how one culture will be like super strict parenting, but then the second culture or the next generation that comes along will be much more laxed parents. And the entire premise of the book was like there's 4 types of individuals or 4 types, but then there was also a generational thing where one generation was real tight parenting, and then the next generation was like really loose and easy parenting. Almost like our generation, my generation, like my parents were very, very easy and very loose and let us do all kinds of shit that like normally like I would never let my kids do.
Yeah.
And even my son admits that when he would go over to stay the night with his grandma that he had the time of his life. And then he tells us like 10 years later that he almost got hit by a car one time when he was over there. And he's just like, oh, I didn't want to worry you, you know.
But I'm telling you guys this now.
Right. So like my parents, that's the way that they raised me, like easy breezy. I did whatever I wanted. And I feel like I raised my son quite a bit different. Like I wanted to know where he was going, who he was doing things with. Although we let him, fuck up his life on Grand Theft Auto, we really made damn sure that he didn't fuck up his life in reality.
Yeah. But I think honestly we've always kind of told him the good and the bad, with everything. And I think also like another thing with like parenting, I remember like being young, I had this impression that like your parents and the people that are older, like your elders or whatnot, like they were perfect. They did everything right. There was no mistakes, this and that. And then when like with my parents, when they ended up splitting up, like all this stuff went to shit. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So in all honesty, when I had Jonathan, I was like, I'm not taking that route. I've always told Jonathan, I'm like, hey, I'm human. Me and your dad are human. We're going to make mistakes, but we're all in this together.
Yeah, we actually had our son stop us one Christmas night from going into our association area. So we live in this, whatever, I don't know, fuck you call it, community. And it's got like an association where we got to pay for like, people that do the grass outside of our property, trees, shit like that. Well, right behind our house are quite a few evergreen trees.
But they just plant them, so they were little.
Yeah. So they were little at the time. They're actually getting pretty big now, but they were evergreen trees. And me and her, we realized like Christmas Eve that we didn't have a fucking Christmas tree.
Well, Jonathan wanted to put one up, and we didn't have one to put one up. And I was like, hey,
and
let's just
to
go
say,
back there.
So we had the podcast last week, which, it's going to be hard to top that one. But we had the podcast last week about how we drank and what happened, what that led. But we were fucked up. And we were literally, she was getting an axe while I was getting a Sawzall. I have a DeWalt Sawzall. And we were going to go out there and fucking cut one of them bitches down. And all of a sudden, like, we're out there gathering shit in the garage, getting everything ready to go fucking cut one of these trees down. And all of a sudden, our son, like, opens the garage door. And he looks at us, like, honestly, like a parent will look at their kids and goes, are you guys really doing that? And we're like, yeah, man. And then he's like,
trying to make you have a good Christmas.
yeah. And he's like, don't do it. And we both looked at each other. We're like, why? He's like, just don't do it. And we're like,
he's like, that's not a good idea.
we look at each other and we're like, all right. We
Yeah.
put everything back and then came back in. But we were going to drag one of them big ass bitches into our garage and it would have been
wasn't
sitting
that
there in the
hateful.
morning.
It was only about 3 foot tall. Just,
We're like, well, our whole idea is like, they'd never notice.
No,
It's
they
just
wouldn't
one
notice.
evergreen tree.
And it was
among...
dark, Nobody would have seen us cutting it down. We could have gotten away with it. It would have been a good time.
Yeah. So, I mean, that being said, we actually raised a kid that actually does a little bit of parenting to us time and time again.
Well, we had him young, so, what do you expect? You kind of
he's
grow up together.
He's a very mature kid, though, and now-
Everybody that meets him, loves him. They're like,
yeah, he's one of them guys, man. You just can't not like him,
I think it's because he's a Virgo. I honestly
And I'm not even
do.
saying that
I think
because he's my
that's why.
kid, I'm just saying that because anybody who runs into him, he's just got that nature to him that you immediately like him.
Yeah.
Unlike me, I could violently piss somebody off the first time. And I know it. I know it. And maybe it's because, I could literally look at somebody and the very first time I meet him and just be like, who the fuck is this? That's just my nature. You know what I mean? I am I'm a nice guy. I'm a very, very nice guy. But I'm a fucking tough person, when it comes to business. And I've been around the fucking game quite a bit. I fully understand. I'm not gonna get fucked over. I'm not gonna allow people in my circle that shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? I'm not the kind of guy that just fucking opens his arms to everybody and anybody and allows them in my life. I love that y'all are listening to my podcast, but it takes a minute for me to actually allow somebody into my circle or into my world. You know what I mean? So, even when it comes to my business coaching clients, there's a lot of them that I won't even offer the opportunity to work with me because after I talk to them for a while, not that I'm judging them, but I'm sitting here thinking about my own sanity. You know what I mean? I'm sitting here thinking about look, one of the things you all got to be very, very careful about is just the energy that you have around you. You know what I mean? And I'm not even saying it's good or bad. I'm saying you got to understand what's good or bad for you. Okay? So you got to understand what's good or bad for you. And that's why there's a lot of people that I'll talk to. It seems like most people when they go through and they want to hook up with me for coaching, most people that I talk to are right along that line. They understand, they're cool, they seem fully developed mentally, physically, ready to go. But then there's just a few that get in there that I can't work with because I know that, well, number one, they probably won't listen to the shit that I tell them to do. And that's a problem. You can't fucking work with somebody that won't listen to the shit that you tell them to do. The second thing is if I don't think they're geared up to be an entrepreneur and they're a little bit back and forth in their own mind and stuff like that, and I've got to work them through the really premature level of just getting over the fear to make shit happen, then that's not something I'm interested in.
No, wait a minute. You just brought up a good point because I think we were talking about that a couple days ago about fear.
Yeah.
And how there's 2 different types of fear.
Well, yeah, there is 2 different types of fear, and one fear is a super healthy fear. I was talking to her, I have a fear of alcohol now, and that fear comes from a healthy, I went down this road, I went down this path, and it almost took my life, and it almost ruined my life, and all this. So I've developed a healthy fear of that. You should have a fear for things that deem to fuck your whole world up. You know what I mean? We should have a healthy fear that says, I don't want to step in front of this bus because if this bus hits me, it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm afraid of that. Or I don't want to jump off the edge of this building because I know when I hit the ground, I'm going to die. That's a healthy fear. That's the fear that was actually that has actually saved our kind for thousands of years. It's a fear that has actually saved us for thousands of years. And what that fear will actually do is it can set off several things. You can do fight or flight, but most of the time it paralyzes you. It sets off a chemical in your body that creates paralysis inside of your body. And it's even proven, it's fucking proven that even during things such as like school shootings and things like that, like people have been saved because they fell and they played dead. They paralyzed, the fear paralyzed them, and they fell to the ground and acted as if they were dead. It's the people that ran and shit or tried to fight the person that ended up getting, hurt or killed. Not to say a heroic fight's not a good thing, you know what I mean? Things like that. But the truth of the matter is that Perilous has saved us, okay? Because you're not going to run away from a fucking saber-toothed tiger. It's going to trip you in the back of the leg and then bite you in the neck, and you're definitely not going to fight it unless you have a group of cavemen with fucking spears and shit like that. Now you're not afraid of that motherfucker anymore, you know what I mean? So that being said, there's also a bad fear, and that fear is like literally, I talk to people about this, people are afraid to make certain moves in their life and their business, and they're afraid to grow. And they've got this fear inside of them that actually causes paralysis, causing them not to make any moves. It literally does the same thing inside of their body. It freezes them and stops them from actually moving or making any changes or doing anything to better their situation or life because they have a fear of it.
And then it makes them stagnant.
But a lot of times they haven't even really defined what that fear is. Because there's different fears that people have, what I find from coaching and working with people. And some of the fears come from fear of just being seen that you're a failure. You know what I mean? Fear of, you're really never afraid of failing on your own. You're always afraid of being seen as a failure. And, Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this a lot. And he talks about, this is my fucking failure. You know what I mean? If I fail, it's my fucking failure. Not nobody else's, not my parents, not my wife's, not my kids. It's my failure. The second thing is a lot of people put a lot more pain in the failure. Like if they failed, like I always ask people, I'm like, if we did this and you failed, where would you be at if we failed? You know what I mean? Would you lose all your money? But okay, so could you make more money? I mean, what's the worst case scenario if everything fell apart, everything broke to pieces? What would be the worst case scenario that you would actually end up as or with or whatever? What's the worst case scenario? So now, okay, well, let's think about that, and then let's realize that normally it's not so fucking bad. You know what I mean? It's not, that worst case scenario is not so fucking bad.
I would have to sell all my shoes.
Which is not bad because you could always buy new shoes.
Exactly.
You could always buy more shoes.
I think John always told me, he's like, what would ever happen if let's say like the house caught on fire or something and you would like lose all your shoes? And I'm like, well, I would just have to start that journey all over again. It'd be a new collection. And you have to buy more
shoes, right?
A new collection, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that being said, that's what I want you guys to think about. That's one thing. Another thing that we were talking about today, and I actually just dropped a Sunday sermon, my very first Sunday sermon. I call it the Savage Sunday fucking sermon earlier, and it was about walking in faith. But one of the things I want you guys to realize, and something that I've been in very deep study about, and don't get me wrong, this isn't like that. The shit I'm about ready to tell you is not that bullshit that you think about something and that pops up and appears in front of you. That never happens. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. It doesn't work that way. But that on the other hand, what you got to realize is this world was thought of before it was created. You know what I mean? So the world was thought of before it was created. All right? Meaning that the very thing that created this world and everything in it and all the resources that we have to create, because we are a creative center, we are full of creativity. We are actually the only thing above and beyond the creator that created this entire world that can actually fucking form thoughts and hold thoughts and create. So because of that, a lot of times what you got to realize, you got to step into and believe at such a high level that what you want or what you are or what you're going to have is true, is already given to you, that you're just walking towards it, that you're going to open your mind, your creative mind, to begin receiving it. It's when you fall into doubt. It's when you fall into doubt is when you fall off the creative path and the journey that you're going to create and build and manifest that fucking amazing life around you. So keeping and holding that thought, that whatever this thing is, whatever this dream life that you're putting together, whatever you're walking towards, whatever you want in life, whether it's to work 10 hours a week and spend the rest of your time with your family, or whether it's to own a Lamborghini, or whether it's to buy a new house, or whether it's to spend time on the road on vacation, you have to believe that it's already yours before your mind will open up and actually start creating possibilities to make that journey or that reality possible. If you guys haven't read it, I've talked about it in the past. Read The Science of Getting Rich. It is, in fact, I listen to it all the time. And the reason why I listen to it all the time, it's a very basic book, but it holds probably the most concrete principles of exactly how the world works and how to align yourself with the abundant power that's like in and around you, and how to harness that power and turn it into, living whatever life you choose. Before I was where I am, I believed that I was there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I believed that I was already there in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. And because of that, I was able to open up the creative abilities to receive and to create the things. It's when people fall into disbelief, when people fall into the depression, when people fall into pain, when people fall into doubt, is when you almost do the exact opposite. You'll actually start constructing and building plans that are towards your own demise. And when you hold a thought in that pattern, in that belief, you will start finding the things that align themselves with that belief. I've always talked about that. If you're literally a positive thinking fucking machine and you're holding your mind on a belief that what you're walking towards is there, it's waiting for you, and it's happening as you speak, you will bring that thing to light. You will bring that thing to light. It brings a different motive. It brings a different energy out of you that causes you to become an absolute problem-solving, creative fucking center that figures out a way. Like, literally, before I fucking do anything, if I want to live a certain life, if I want a bigger and a better dream, one of the very first things I do is I sketch it out on a piece of paper. I say, what do I want? And then I look at, well, what do I have to do to get there? Right? What do I have to do to get there? Do I have to do, okay, so what can I sell? If it's something, like, what can I sell, right? Like, how many of them can I sell? What can I launch? What can I do? What's the fucking journey that's going to take me there? And one of the great things about, like, doing it that way, you're reverse engineering where you want to be. You don't get caught in a lot of activities that are bound to take you somewhere else. So you got to understand that to be where you want to be, depending on what that dream is, everybody's dream's different. But to be where you want to be, it's a series of activities that you gotta get in the habit of doing on a daily basis. In fact, it's been said that instead of focus on chasing money, which most people do, they just focus on, I need $1 million. I'm just gonna focus on changing money. Focus on the habits that you need to ingrain into your daily existence to be the type of person that would actually have whatever it is that you're moving towards. Focus on being that type of person. And the true gift of the entire thing of having a big goal is the person you become on pursuit of that goal. Because that's something that can't be taken away from you. The things can be taken away from you, man. The house, the cars, the fucking money, all that shit could be taken away from you. But the character that you forge inside of yourself can never be taken away from you. So that's why, as human beings, we always want to be a pursuit of higher, bigger, better goals. Because as we move towards these things, we're forging the character in our heart and our mind and our soul that is going to live with us forever. It's going to be part of our legacy. And we're going to pass it down to people around us.
That's right.
Started
the podcast out with poop stories, and then it got so inspirational after that.
We ended it with this.
You just never know where it's going to go.
You never know where it's going to go on this podcast. That's the one thing. It's a roller coaster of emotions. We start out with a shit story and end with some motivational stuff.
Yeah, that was really good.
So that being said, this is probably going to be a short one tonight. You want to bail out of this one?
No, I want to say something. So, like, the last one that we did, obviously, we told everybody, like, what we went through. And I was telling John how amazing it feels, like, me inside that we like released all that shit and just threw it out there in the universe. But my big thing is like, no matter what you're going through in life, you know, hitting rock bottom, or, you know, I was telling John, I was like, we were just kind of like thrown into hell, you know, into the, like, you know.
Well, now, hey, hold on for a second, because the entire time I lived with gratitude through the whole thing.
Well, yeah. But I mean, you know, it wasn't like the greatest experience. You know, it had highs and it had lows, and then it had lows and then it had highs. But my biggest thing is that, in all honesty, when we were going through that, like, I told myself, I said, you know, going through all these emotions, especially anger, because I went through a lot of anger. I had a lot of anger towards John. I had a lot of anger towards the police officers. But I told myself, I said, I'm going to sit with this anger and I'm going to deal with this anger. I'm going to deal with all these emotions that are coming my way. And the biggest thing that I told myself is that in the end, I am not going to end up being a bitter person. I'm not going to let that situation like dim my light. Yeah. And I think that I really held true to that because, you know, I honestly felt I'm a better person when we went through that whole experience than what I was before. Because I was even telling John, and I told a couple other people, I was like, man, I really found my voice. You know, it was like, we went through all that shit, and I was like, I really found my voice. And I don't know if, like, some people get where I'm coming from, but it was like, it was something that was inside of me and that I think that has always been there. But now it's, I don't know. I don't know. It just makes sense to me. Like, I found my voice. Maybe I'm better with putting boundaries up. Or I was even telling John, like, you know, when it comes to people or it comes to friends and stuff like that, like, I'll throw some energy out there in your way. But if I'm not getting that same energy back in return, then I'm just going to leave it be. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. See, she actually still cares to have friendships.
I mean, certain people, there's certain people that I love. I mean, but that's just the type of person that I am. I mean, there's very few people that I really love and that I really cherish.
I think over time I've learned to not really expect much out of anybody, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't like it. Look, if I ever invite you to go somewhere, I'm not going to be sitting there wondering if you're going to go there or not. I'll fucking invite you, and if you go, you go. You don't, you don't. Like, none of that shit matters to me anymore. Like, none of it. None of it. And you know what? When you get to that level of feeling just the way that you feel about the situation, where you let things go into the world, like you don't harbor any feeling about others regardless, you expect nothing out of anybody, that's when everybody wants to fucking hang out with you.
Well, I think what it is when you're able to sit alone with yourself and be completely content with yourself and not needing other people in your life. And I honestly feel that when we were going through that, we both like felt that we felt that thing that's inside of us, you know, like, hey, you know, it's not that bad being by ourselves. Like,
well, and I love it. Like, to be honest with you, like, man, I love spending that quality time with just my family. You know, I just, it's just what it is. You know, I mean, it's just what it is. And like, even when we go places, like we go to Nashville, and some people found out we went to Nashville. And I probably had like 6 or 7 people wanting me to stop by. Well, how in the fuck would my 2-day Nashville trip go if I had to stop at 6 or 7 places? You know, no disrespect to anybody. It's just that when I go to get away somewhere, I actually go to get the fuck away. Like, I don't want to fucking hang out with anybody. I don't want to meet people for dinner, you know? When we went to Utah, we had people that wanted to meet us for dinner and shit like that. I don't want to meet people for dinner in Utah. I want to go enjoy the mountains. I want to go to fucking dinner by myself, you know?
Yeah, but I think also, like, another thing, like, it was such a traumatic event that we went through that John and I really cherish our time together more now than what we ever have before. And it's definitely brought us closer together as a couple. like big time.
Yeah. It's the way that shit's supposed to happen. Either things will fucking make you or break you. You know what I mean? Either things will make you or break you. If you haven't listened to last week's podcast, you better jump back and listen to it. Or if you're on Facebook watching us, scroll on down, check it out. There's fucking a lot of shit going on that one. And I do appreciate, like everybody, I did expect some negativity to come out of it. And I'm sure there's probably some of that negative chatter out there, which I don't really give a fuck about. But everybody who commented on the post, everything like that was it was cool as fuck to see the support that we had. And, couldn't have went any better. It feels better to get it out into the world.
It does.
And, I would say probably I had so much faith during that time. I practiced all these things I'm telling you guys to practice. I kept my mind on the positive. I expected great things to happen. There was one night that I sat there and started Googling fucking prison and shit like that. And that was the only time that I remember falling into like a fucking deep feeling of depression, was that one evening. And that's proof, because let's just say I spent all of my time doing that. Then something good could have happened and I would have never even fucking seen it. I would have been expecting the worst.
Yeah.
It's proof that in any situation, if you can keep your mind on the positive, hold true to the vision of what the outcome is going to be, and we talk about the dream of your life, you hold true and strong to that vision, your mind is going to be at such a much more receptive level to actually receive the information that you need to make it there. You know what I mean? Like, I know negative motherfuckers, like I'll give you an example. And I love my mom to death, but she was probably one of the most pessimistic people that I've ever met in my life.
She's a good woman.
And I used to laugh about it. I used to toy around with her about it. And, I used to like really get her going. And for me, it was like a game with her. But she literally, you could say something like, hey, Mom, I'd win the lottery. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, well, then you'd have to worry about your kids getting kidnapped. And she would just, every situation, she had like a pessimistic outlook on it. So for somebody who continuously, and yeah, don't get me wrong, she had her levels of like, she's just an amazing person, but she was just like, any type of idea, like anything, especially when it came to making money. You know what I mean? A lot of us weren't raised by parents that were real receptive to making money. They held a lot of views that were potentially negative about money that affected us in our life, that we actually had to learn how to break them views and reform new, fresh, good, healthy beliefs around money. And, the truth of the matter is, like, anytime you spoke of something about making money with her, she'd find something negative about it. And that's why she didn't make a lot of money. Because if somebody all day long is thinking negative shit about money, you would almost have to be a crook, or you'd have to have a character of somebody who is like a sociopath to accept money, because now you're accepting something that goes against your core beliefs. And literally the moment people don't align their core beliefs with reality, then they are going to they're going to find something else. Like, literally, shit could be, if you have a negative fucking stance on money, and if you have a negative stance on like doing business or fucking whatever it is, if you have some sort of negative feeling behind it, you're going to find ways to fucking avoid that shit like the plague.
Yeah.
And the truth is, it's our moral compass telling us, don't do that. It's wrong. Or maybe you hold this belief that if you make money, your family will run away from you because your father's brother made a bunch of money and then all the family turned away from him and stopped inviting him to the fucking cookouts and shit like that, right? So you hold this belief, if I make money, everybody will fucking throw me away, which is so fucking untrue. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Just don't let anybody steal your fucking sparkle. You hear me? Like, seriously.
Especially all of you dent techs that are out here listening to this.
You guys
don't let
all
anybody steal your sparkle.
Don't.
If I ever meet you and you don't have your fucking sparkle, I'm gonna be pissed, man.
Don't let anybody.
I'm gonna
steal
bring
your
it up.
fucking
I'm gonna be
sparkle.
like, bro.
I mean it. Like, seriously. Like,
I'm gonna be like, bro.
No matter how bad it gets,
where's
that
your fucking sparkle?
is still there. Okay,
bro. Where's your sparkle?
It might not be shining as bright as what it normally does, but don't let anybody steal that sparkle. Seriously.
All right, everybody. Appreciate you. And as usual, we're going to see you on that next one.
And remember, it's all about the motherfucking hustle.
Honk, honk.
Bang, bang.